It's a sad, sad day in music. We recently had the passings of Biggie's mother, Valletta Wallace. Then we had the passing of Roberta Flack. And now we just got news of the passing of Chris Jasper of the Isley brothers. And if that name isn't automatically familiar to you, you must be familiar with this name and his beautiful body of work. In short, if it wasn't for Chris Jasper, I don't think that the Isley brothers are able to transition into and through the 70s in the way that they were able to. Chris Jasper was basically their chief songwriter, producer, arranger, and keyboardist through that historic 70s run. And he just passed away after I think it was like a 2-year battle with cancer at 73 years old. So before Chris Jasper was even in the Isley brothers picture, the Isley brothers were already a successful vocal trio from Cincinnati. Chris Jasper also from Cincinnati, but the three older Isley brothers, Ronald Isley, Rudolph or Rudy Isley, and O'Kelly Isley, they had, late 50s success with the song Shout. That was their huge breakthrough hit. A couple years later, they had the original Twist and Shout that the Beatles would later cover and then make even more famous. And then for a time, the Isley brothers were signed to Motown in the 60s. They had the beautiful song This Old Heart of Mine. So this is all within the framework of the three original Isley brothers. Yes, there was a fourth, Vernon Isley, when they were kids, who died like as a kid. He got struck by a car when riding his bike through the neighborhood. But yeah, that was when the Isley brothers were basically kids, and they were a quartet at the time. But they had those Shout, Twist and Shout, This Old Heart of Mine hits, and then they kind of went through a dry spell. And at the time, their brother-in-law, Chris Jasper, whose sister got married to Rudy Isley. So that's how Chris Jasper became related to the Isley brothers. They all kind of grew up together, but through that marriage, Chris Jasper was the brother-in-law. And he ended up going to New York after high school to study music composition at Juilliard. So Chris Jasper is the classically trained musician in the group. He is the most, I would say, musically advanced in the Isley brothers. So while he was getting musically trained classically, becoming a multi-instrumentalist, really diving into music theory, the three brothers had been living in Teaneck, New Jersey. They moved from Cincinnati to Teaneck. That's where they started to really get going career-wise. And then Chris Jasper also moved to Teaneck, New Jersey, and he started a group, like a band, with the two younger brothers. So the three older brothers, the classic Isley brothers, the vocal trio, had two younger brothers, Marvin and Ernie. Chris Jasper started a band with them, and after they got going and they started like really developing a synergy together, the three older brothers were looking to take that next step musically because they weren't having as much success around this time. So they basically incorporated the three younger brothers, or should I say the two younger brothers and the brother-in-law, Chris Jasper, to become a part of the Isley brothers. And the first instance of one of the younger brothers contributing to an actual Isley brothers song was as early as 1969. That was their biggest hit throughout their whole career. Their biggest hit was the single It's Your Thing. That was 1969. Ernie Isley is actually, I believe he's playing bass on that song. And by the way, when the younger brothers had that band trio, Chris Jasper, Ernie, and Marvin, Ernie was actually playing the drums. But years later, when they fully got integrated into the Isley brothers band, and the first album that they released together was 3+3, great album, they switched to Ernie Isley becoming the guitarist, Marvin being the bassist, and then Chris Jasper being the keyboardist and, again, songwriter, arranger, producer. So starting with 3+3 in 1973, and that signifies the three older brothers plus the three younger brothers, all the way to 1983's Between the Sheets. That's the album that had the title track Between the Sheets and Choosy Lover. They had this 6-member Isley brothers band, again, 3 vocalists, 3 musicians, and they went on a tremendous run throughout the 70s and well into the 80s. And again, I don't think that this run takes place without Chris Jasper and his musical leadership. Like basically he would compose the song and then he would bring the brothers along to kind of play their parts. The vocalist, obviously, and Ernie Isley and Marvin playing the guitar and bass. And by the way, Ernie Isley would obviously go on to become an iconic guitarist. He was very Jimi Hendrix influenced. Jimi Hendrix, by the way, was an early backing guitarist when the Isley brothers were just the vocal trio. This is like, mid 60s. That is before Jimi Hendrix started his own career with the Jimi Hendrix Experience. But yeah, Jimi Hendrix heavily influenced Ernie Isley. But that 1973 to 1983 run with the albums 3+3, 2 albums later, they had The Heat Is On. That's one of their best albums. After that, they had Harvest for the World, Go for Your Guns, and then several albums later they had Between the Sheets. So they just went on this remarkable run where they were dropping like at least an album per year. And think about some of those singles during that stretch. Like, one of the early ones during that 73 to 83 run was Summer Breeze. Brilliant song. Just sonically, it just sounds so lush and beautiful. The reworking of Who's That Lady? They had the song That Lady back in the 60s. They totally redid it, and listen to that intro guitar from Ernie Isley. Like, tell me that's not some psychedelic rock influence, Jimi Hendrix influence guitar splash to kick off the 70s version of That Lady from that 3+3 album. And while the Isley brothers, they did both like funk, R&B, it's really the ballads that got me. To me, that's what really set them apart from anybody else throughout the 70s. Like, you would have to look at maybe like Al Green or somebody who comes off as soothing with the ballads as the Isley brothers did. Again, they had some excellent funk songs, Fight the Power and so forth. But I feel like there were other bands that could at least match them on the funk end. You had Earth, Wind and Fire, Graham Central Station, obviously Parliament and Funkadelic. You had other funk bands that could rival the Isley brothers' funk music. But again, when it comes to the ballads, I really feel like they sit on a pedestal pretty much by themselves. Like, you think about some of those songs. For the Love of You, At Your Best, You Are Loved. That's the one that Aaliyah covered. Think about that. And think about how gorgeous of a song that is. You've got Footsteps in the Dark, that Ice Cube sampled. And that's another thing about the Isley brothers. They are one of the most sampled artists in rap history. Like, Bone Thugs and Harmony got the Crossroads instrumental from Make Me Say It Again Girl from the Isley brothers. That was in that 73 to 83 run as well. The Bone Thugs and Harmony song Buddha Lovers starts off with the Choosy Lover vocal reinterpretation. You've got, as I mentioned, Footsteps in the Dark that was sampled famously for Ice Cube's It Was a Good Day. You've got Between the Sheets that was sampled for Notorious B.I.G.'s Big Papa. Tracy Lee, some of y'all 90s rap fans might remember him from around 97. He had the song called It's Party Time, the theme. Well, he had a song on that album called On the Edge, one of the best songs on that Many Faces album. That sampled Let Me Down Easy. That's another gorgeous Isley Brothers ballad, Let Me Down Easy. And again, these were all composed, produced, written, and keyboarded by Chris Jasper. Think about the keyboard on For the Love of You. And if you listen to Let Me Down Easy, listen to the keyboard in that. That is a part of their signature sound that they developed. So please give those albums a listen, from 3+3 all the way to 1983's Between the Sheets. And I actually developed a Spotify playlist called The Isley Brothers Best Songs. And I pretty much have what I personally consider to be some of their best songs listed in the playlist. And I put it in chronological order. So you start with 1959's Shout and you go all the way to, the Isley Brothers of the 90s and into the 2000s. Remember, in the mid 90s, they had Let's Lay Together, Tears, and eventually Contagious. That was like the last Isley Brothers original hit. But Chris Jasper was out by then. After 1983, Chris Jasper left the band, and with Ernie Isley and Marvin Isley, they started Isley Jasper Isley. They put out 3 albums together, including Caravan of Love. That is such an awesome album. It's got a song, Insatiable Woman, that Noriega and his producer sampled on the Nori debut for a song called The Way We Live. But listen to Insatiable Woman. Listen to Giving You Back the Love from their last album called Different Drummer. And definitely listen to the title track, Caravan of Love. If you listen to that song, you'll kind of get what Chris Jasper's about. He's very positivity driven. Like if you ever listen to him in interviews, he's really big on like education, togetherness, black love, human love, globally, just human love and the end of human suffering. Like he's very visionary in that way. Listen to the lyrics of Caravan of Love. And you could also hear that he's a very good lead singer. Like he's the lead singer of Isley, Jasper, Isley, and he sounds quite good. But yeah, listen to that production of Caravan of Love. I mean, it's one of those melodies that just get stuck in your head, and it's a very inspiring song. And again, that's what Chris Jasper was about. And after Isley, Jasper, Isley disbanded after 3 albums, Marvin went back with Ronald and Rudy to rejoin the Isley brothers, and Ernie would follow suit later on in that same year. So Marvin and Ernie went back with Ronald Isley and Rudy Isley. O'Kelly died around that time. And then Chris Jasper started a solo career. He actually had a #1 R&B hit called Superbad, and that's another one of those positivity songs. It stresses education, and it kind of speaks against having to like compromise your character or your integrity for the sake of being cool, basically pushing the idea that education and knowledge are cool and are way cooler than the things that are typically seen as cool. So Chris Jasper wasn't afraid to go against the grain. Like he wanted to drive his message, and he actually created like 16 solo albums. He had like 4 gospel albums, very versatile musically and thematically, conceptually. Again, he's very jazzy, he's very soulful, psychedelic. He incorporated so many different elements, gospel, into his music and into the Isley brothers' music throughout the 70s. So please, if you are even a slight fan of the Isley brothers. Now, Isley brothers are seriously one of my top 10 favorite bands ever, along with, you know, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Earth, Wind and Fire, Pink Floyd. For me, the Isley brothers are right there. And I can't think of another band who outdoes them longevity wise. Again, they've got hits from the 50s to the early 2000s. Who else has that? 50s hits, 60s hits, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Hits in all of those decades. Give me another artist who has done that. But yeah, rest in peace to Chris Jasper. I was very sad to hear that news. And I've done a few short videos on different chapters of the Isley brothers' career, including a couple about Chris Jasper specifically. I feel like he's kind of one of these unsung heroes in modern music. He's one of the people who really popularized the Moog synthesizer, one of his keyboards. And again, he's as responsible as anybody in the Isley brothers for creating, developing, and performing, showcasing that sound that we have come to love from the Isley brothers. So yeah, rest in peace, Chris Jasper, just passed away at 73. He has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Yeah, he was a bad boy, but he was a good soul. Please look up Chris Jasper, listen to as much Isley brothers as you can, and just know, during that historic 73 through 83 stretch when they were a 6-person band, that was Chris Jasper writing, producing, arranging, and playing the keys. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts on Chris Jasper and on the Isley brothers as a whole. Let me know if you have 3 favorite Isley brothers songs. I mean, there's so many hits to choose from. It's really tough. I can tell you that my favorite Isley brothers song is probably Voyage to Atlantis from Go For Your Guns. That's the same album that has Footsteps in the Dark. Yeah, think about that. The same album that has Footsteps in the Dark has Voyage to Atlantis. I just love that guitar splash, and then that Come Back to You kind of like repeated refrain in the back half of the song. Just a beautiful song altogether. And the Isley brothers have several beautiful songs, again, largely due to Chris Jasper being such a musical visionary. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. I'm Woog. Rest in peace, Chris Jasper.